කෝඩියෙන් භාගයයි කලක් පවතින අලුත් පෙනුමයි.
Tonight, so far so good. COVID home treatment patients past 41,000 with 0 deaths. Rapid gains. Over 7 million fully vaccinated, accounting for almost 31% of Sri Lanka's population. Discouraging the unethical. The Consumer Affairs Authority cracks down on the sale of substandard oximeters. Government pledge. Brown sugar at 130 rupees per kilogram from Wednesday. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Sunday, the 29th of August, 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanai. Now then, the home treatment program implemented by the country's health officials to ensure that the healthcare system does not come under too much stress has seen nothing but progress since its inception. President of the Association of Specialist Family Physicians, Dr. Malkanthi Galhena, said today that over 41,000 people sought treatment under the program and over 24,000 have recovered at their residences. The crucial fact is that there have not been any deaths pertaining to the program.
Since the 20th of August, Sri Lanka has continuously recorded daily COVID infections in the excess of 4,000. On the 21st, the daily caseload was 4,947. However, over the next 2 days, the number breached 5,000. 5,547 fresh cases recorded on the 23rd is the largest single-day infection Sri Lanka has seen to date, following the outbreak of COVID-19 in the island. It's not only the daily caseload that kept rising. By now, it is well documented how and why the daily fatalities also shot up, parallel to the rise in fresh cases. On Friday last week, 214 COVID-related deaths were confirmed by the Director General of Health, the country's highest in a single day so far. And yesterday, there were 212 fatalities. The majority of these victims continue to be above the age of 60, while those with underlying health conditions also succumbing more to the virus on average. COVID-19, as it would with any virus, has evolved, and the latest result is the Delta variant. More virulent with a higher virus load, the variant has pushed the country's healthcare system to the brink of collapse. But thankfully, the COVID treatment program has made some positive strides and has eased the pressure. Under the program, asymptomatic and patients with mild symptoms are treated at their homes under clinical supervision of a physician.
කොවිඩ් රෝගීන් සඳහා පසුගිය ජූනි මාස 7 වෙනිදා පටන් ගත්ත නිවෙස්ගත රෝගී සත්කාරක සේවාව මුළු ලංකාවටම ව්‍යාප්ත කරලා තියෙනවා දැන්. මේ වන විට අපි රෝගීන් 41826ක් නිවෙස්ගත ක්‍රමයට අනුගත කරගෙන තියෙනවා. එතනදී අපි රෝගීන් 24847ක් සුව වෙලා අපේ මේ පද්ධතියෙන් ඔවුන්ව මුදා හැරලා තියෙනවා. අද මේ වෙන විට අපිත් එක්ක රැඳී ඉන්නවා 16502ක් රෝගීන්. සතුටෙන් කියන්න ඕනේ කාරණයක් තමයි රෝහල් ගත කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපි 474ක් පමණයි රෝගීන්. මේ නිවසේ රැඳී සිටීමෙන් කරන ප්‍රතිකාර ක්‍රමයේදී මේ රෝගීන්ගේ මානසික සහනය කියන එක ප්‍රධාන දෙයක් වශයෙන් ඔවුන්ගෙන් ප්‍රතිචාරවලදී අපිට ලැබිලා තියෙනවා.
Dr. Galhena, however, told First at 9 that there could be a small discrepancy in the numbers provided owing to delays in the system updates. In other developments, there were 2,204 COVID recoveries today that pushed the overall figure up to 357,598. Though the country was placed under quarantine curfew limiting movements of the masses to control the spread of the virus, some people continue to flout the regulations. As things stand, the only people permitted to move during the curfew are those engaged in essential services and those travelling on compassionate grounds. But when looking at the roads, especially in Colombo, it is hard to imagine that all these people moving about fit into those categories.
බස්නාහිර පළාතේ මායිම් ආවරණය වන පරිදි ස්ථාපිත කොට තිබෙන මාර්ග බාධක 13 ඊයේ දිනේදී ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනු ලැබුවා. ඒ අනුව අවවාද කිරීම සිදු කර හරවා යවූ වාහන සංඛ්‍යාව 846ක්. මේ අනුව නිරීක්ෂණය වන්නේ තවදුරටත් අනවශ්‍ය කාරණා සඳහා සංචරණයන් සිදු කරන පුද්ගලයන් සමාජයේ සිටින බවයි.
Now then, Sri Lanka is currently under quarantine curfew and almost 20% of the country's population and the economy are on survival mode. Given the economic strife the island is in, Professor Emeritus of Sociology Siri Hettige believes that a fresher approach might be needed moving ahead. He is of the view that the present state of public finances makes it an uphill task for the government to look after the welfare of the country's daily wage earning segment by itself. With the prevailing quarantine curfew extended until the 6th of next month, the Sri Lankan people and the country's economy are facing the same situation: survival. While those partial towards the lockdown want it extended further on health grounds in the backdrop of the pandemic, its detractors can't wait for it to end. On one hand, the economy is losing billions of rupees for each day the lockdown is in place, and on the other hand, approximately 4.5 million daily wage earners in the country are wondering how they will make ends meet. Given the strife of this section of society, which accounts for almost 20% of the country's population, Professor Emeritus of Sociology Siri Hettige believes that a fresher approach might be needed moving ahead, especially with the current state of public finances, making it an uphill task for the government to look after the welfare of that segment of society by itself.
This lockdown is not going to impact everybody equally. There are certain segments of society that would be very adversely affected. And I think here we are talking about the informal sector workers, then the poor people and so on. These people will not be able to really meet their basic needs if they have to go through a prolonged lockdown unless some measures are taken to really cushion them. But on the other hand, it is quite clear now that the public finances do not really permit the government to really respond to this in an adequate manner.
Professor Hettige adds that instead of piecemeal measures, a whole-of-country effort is the right approach involving the mobilization of the many stakeholders in society, including civil society, corporates, philanthropists and even international agencies.
I think it is a national effort that is required. It is not a piecemeal interventions from different people in different places. What I feel is that there are segments of society that can really show their solidarity. This lockdown is not for a very long period and it may be for a few weeks or it may be a month or so. But during that short period, we need to really mobilize society to really respond to this big socio-economic issue. We have the capacity to take care of the most vulnerable people in this country, but we are not mobilizing. That's the only problem.
In conclusion, Professor Hettige says that it comes down to simple mathematics in the end, where he sees no issue with the ability of the country's more affluent members of society in shouldering the burden of the country's most vulnerable for just over a month, or at most 2.
I did a simple calculation. If you take the lower 20% of the population, which is the most vulnerable, and if you take the upper 20% of the population, which is the most affluent, we are basically talking about 1 million households being in a position to support 1 million households. You see, that's as simple as that. So, let's say if you have to give 10,000 rupees a month, so if you are a very wealthy person, what is 10,000 rupees? If the upper 20% of the population cannot take care of that lower 20% for 1 month, then, then there is no chance.
Now, almost 31% of Sri Lanka's total population was fully vaccinated against COVID-19 by last evening. The official figure crossed the 7 million mark, with over 12 million people also having obtained at least one dose of the vaccine. Despite the prevailing curfew, the vaccination program or vaccination drive continues unhindered.
During the course of yesterday, 188,052 persons were inoculated against COVID-19. 4,528 persons obtained the first dose of AstraZeneca's Covishield vaccine, while 679 persons got their second dose. But as usual, the bulk of the inoculations were done with the use of the China-made Sinopharm jab. 14,207 persons received the first dose of it, while 131,544 persons got their second. Meanwhile, the Pfizer vaccine was also rolled out yesterday. 32 persons got its first dose and 796 persons were administered with their second dose. The Moderna vaccine was also used yesterday, with 36,261 persons being given its second dose. There were also 5 persons who were given the Moderna first dose. All in all, by last evening, 12,309,254 persons had been at least partially vaccinated against COVID-19. Out of that number, 7,042,418 persons are fully immunized. That means around 31,000 of the country's total population have now received full vaccine protection against COVID-19.
සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය විසින් වසංගත රෝග විශේෂඥයින් හරහා විවිධ පළාත්වල සිටින අවුරුදු 30ට වැඩි හැම කෙනෙකුටම ඕනෑම ස්ථානයක ඉන්නවනම් ප්‍රථම මාත්‍රාව කොහෙන් හරි ගිහිල්ලා ලබා ගන්නට කියලා දැනුම් දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ දෙවන මාත්‍රාව ලබා දීම සඳහා වෙන් කරන ලද එන්නත් වුවත් ප්‍රථම මාත්‍රාව සඳහා ලබා ගැනීමේ වරදක් නැහැ කියලා දැනුම් දීලා තියෙනවා.
As the vaccination drive is in effect despite the curfew, people showed diligence in making their way to vaccination centres. They were seen getting their jab at the vaccination centres operated by the army in the Viharamadevi Park and the Diyatoyana in Colombo. Outside Colombo, a considerable number of people were seen at the army hospital in Anuradhapura. The process of the vaccine administration by the army personnel was praised by the public, fully validating the involvement of Triforces in the vaccination drive. Meanwhile, the vaccination centres operated by health sector authorities too continue to operate. There, however, were several incidents of concern. At the vaccination centre operated at the Taruka Mandapa Auditorium in Higuragoda in Polonnaruwa, a large number of people was present in expectation of obtaining the second dose of the Sinopharm vaccine. However, a tense situation erupted following the announcement by health officials that only the state employees are being given the vaccine at the premises. The crowds who were furious about it attempted to enter the vaccination centre by force as the security there filtered through state employees. While accusing the health sector officials who operated the centre of not informing of the state employee-only vaccination beforehand, some people who were inconvenienced were strongly of the view that the whole operations should be handed over to the army to ensure smooth function. Meanwhile, last Friday, a tense situation erupted at a vaccination centre operated by the MOH office of Hikkaduwa. The officials there were prematurely packed up and left the premises without administering the jab. However, those who were there charged that the officials marked their vaccine card before they packed up and left with vaccine doses without administering them. Our area correspondent meanwhile quoted some people who were at the premises in hope of getting the jab that certain residents from Colombo had received the second dose at the centre in question in Hikkaduwa. Pertaining to this incident, Director General of Health Services of the Southern Province, Dr. Chandima Siritunga, says that the report submitted by him to the medical officer of health in the relevant area was passed on by the Secretary of the Ministry of Health.
The United Arab Emirates is set to resume tourist visas to vaccinated travellers from all countries starting from the 30th of this month, including countries from which entry was previously prohibited, such as Sri Lanka, India and Pakistan. The move comes in line with the state's strategy in creating a balance between public health and various vital sectors and in support of national efforts to achieve sustainable recovery and revive the economic sector. Vaccinated travellers will also need to do a mandatory rapid PCR laboratory examination at the airport. We will see you on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. The Sri Lankan High Commission in India says that Sri Lankan Airlines will operate 4 weekly flights to Chennai, 4 to Mumbai and 1 to Bengaluru under its new schedule and is expected to introduce significant frequency enhancements after the country opened its borders to India. Under the new schedules, the airline will be resuming services between Colombo and the Indian points Madurai, Tiruchirappalli, Trivandrum and Cochin with flights once a week, whilst Hyderabad and New Delhi will be connected to Colombo with twice weekly flights. Further, the airline's operations out of Chennai and Mumbai will expand up to 5 times a week, whilst its Bangalore-Colombo services will be enhanced to 3 flights a week. The High Commission said that the national carrier has also commenced a buy one get one free campaign to induce travellers to fly to Sri Lanka. Fully vaccinated travellers will only require a negative PCR 72 hours prior to arrival and on-arrival PCR test at a certified hotel. They will then be allowed to roam across the country freely. On the prevailing protocol, the High Commission noted that any vaccine type accepted by the country of origin will also be accepted in the island. Now then, the Consumer Affairs Authority says it is conducting raids to crack down on the sale of substandard oximeters. Southern Provincial Food and Drug Inspector of the CAA, KSH Jayaratne, said that the raids were launched from the Galle district. Reportedly, nearly 250 substandard oximeters had been seized during the raids carried out yesterday. More than 42 pharmacies had been searched during yesterday's operations. The Consumer Affairs Authority says that there are a lot of complaints from the public that substandard oximeters are being sold all over this island, especially to the National Drug Regulatory Authority and the District Health Services Authority in the Southern Province. It added that legal action will be taken in this regard after reporting to the National Drug Regulatory Authority. Now, in other local stories, following AdaDerana's expose on the truth behind the artificial market shortage of sugar, government officials today announced that a maximum retail price for the commodity will be imposed. As such, State Minister of Cooperative Services, Marketing Development and Consumer Protection, Lasantha Alagiwana, said that a maximum price of 130 rupees will be implemented from Wednesday, the 1st of September.
Was able to expose how certain businessmen had created an artificial shortage of sugar in the market by hoarding large volumes of the product. Yesterday, AdaDerana was able to uncover 4,800 tons of sugar that had been stashed away at a warehouse in the area of Marbola in Wattala and bring the owner of the warehouse to justice. And similarly, AdaDerana was also able to uncover another warehouse that had stockpiled on more sugar in the area of Bandaravatta in Siduwa today. Officials of the Consumer Affairs Authority revealed that the warehouse had been operating sans a license. As such, CAA officials sealed 61 tons of sugar that had been stashed away. The officials also advised the owner of the warehouse and the sugar importers to bring the necessary documents and appear before the Consumer Affairs Authority tomorrow to prove their legitimacy. As such, the government announced today that a maximum retail price for sugar will be implemented from next Wednesday.
සතුස සහ සම්පකාර මගින් ලබන බදාදා සිට රතු සීනි උපරිම සිල්ලර මිල රුපියල් 130ක් යටතේ ලබා දීමට අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු මේ වන විටත් ඉටු කරලා තිබෙනවා කියන එක සඳහන් කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම සීනි පිළිබඳවත් අපි විමර්ශන කණ්ඩායම් පසුගිය කාල සීමාව තුලදී විශේෂම නැගෙනහිර පළාතේ ඒ කටයුතු කරමින් තිබෙන්නේ. ඒ අනුව සීනි ගබඩා පිළිබඳවත් ලියාපදිංචි කරලා නැති ගබඩා පිළිබඳවත් අපි පෙරේදා ඊයේ සහ අද දින ඒ වැටලීම් කටයුතු සිදු කිරීමට පාරිභෝගික අධිකාරිය විසින් කටයුතු කරලා තිබෙනවා.
We will see you once more on the other side of this break. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, as the market ended on a positive note last Friday, experts expect the same positivity at the Colombo Stock Exchange throughout the new week that will start tomorrow. The all-share price index gained 10.62 points to close at 8,931.33 points, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks ended stronger at 3,355.09, following a gain of 28.01 points. Now, here's Dimantha Matthew with a brief market forecast for the week ahead.
Looking at the upcoming week, what we feel is that the fluctuation again will be there in the market, because as the market reaches new highs, there are a selected set of investors who are looking at it in a pessimistic attitude, where we feel that there could be some profit taking now coming on the way. Because of that profit taking and possible correction, there could be volatility in the market. However, a huge decline can be ruled out immediately because of the remaining positive sentiment in the market. However, selected shares could go into profit taking and correction, so investors should be mindful of counters which have had large gains, to be careful and take profits at appropriate occasions. So banking sector shares and dollar income companies are the ones that are preferred segment, and those counters are likely to dominate the market in the upcoming week as well.
British troops are now completely out of Afghanistan, ending their involvement in the military operation launched there almost 20 years ago by the United States. It comes as international evacuation efforts wind down and the Taliban prepare to take control of the Kabul airport. A plane was seen departing the Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul, Afghanistan today as international evacuation efforts wind down and the Taliban prepare to take control of the airport. A Western security official was quoted by media saying that crowds at the airport had diminished after the US warned of the threat of another attack by militants after the suicide bombing outside the airport last Thursday, which killed scores, including 13 US troops. The Taliban, Afghanistan's new rulers, have said today that they are aiming for a swift handover of the airport from departing US forces. They have claimed that the group has a team of technical experts and highly qualified engineers ready to take over the airport. In the meantime, Britain's last military flight left Kabul late yesterday after evacuating more than 15,000 people in the 2 weeks since the Taliban took control of Afghanistan, ending nearly 20 years of British military presence in the country. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said in a video released today that all remaining soldiers, diplomats and civil servants have now left.
As I speak, Sir Laurie Bristow, Her Majesty's ambassador, has finally boarded one of the very last flights from Kabul. All remaining soldiers, diplomats and civil servants have now left. We will engage with the Taliban, not on the basis of what they say, but what they do. And if the new regime in Kabul wants diplomatic recognition or to unlock the billions that are currently frozen, they will have to ensure safe passage for those who wish to leave the country, to respect the rights of women and girls, to prevent Afghanistan from again becoming an incubator for global terror, because that would be disastrous for Afghanistan. And we will use every lever we have, political, economic, diplomatic, to help the people of Afghanistan and to protect our own country from harm.
Britain said on Friday that its military would be unable to fly out any Afghan citizens eligible for resettlement who had not already entered the Kabul airport. US President Joe Biden has set an August 31st deadline for the US military to leave Afghanistan, while Allied forces, including Britain, have chosen to leave before then. Meanwhile, the Pentagon said yesterday that US troops have begun their withdrawal from the Kabul airport.
Have U.S. troops begun retrograde withdrawal from the airport?
We have begun retrograding.
Can you say anything about the number who have left?
No, I cannot.
What is your conclusion about what the impact of this strike actually has been?
They have two high-profile planners, or one planner, one facilitator, that are no longer on their muster roll. So they have lost some capability to plan and to conduct missions. Make no mistake, nobody's writing this off and saying, well, we got them, so we don't have to worry about ISIS-K anymore. Not the case.
Some top experts say the claim that the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, is made by humans is extremely unlikely and reflects a regression of scientific thinking. Epidemiologist from the Brigham and Women's Hospital and senior fellow of the Federation of American Scientists, Eric Fiegelding, said during an interview that as a medical professional, he has not found any evidence that suggests the coronavirus was human-made, but quite the opposite.
As an epidemiologist who kind of looks at the totality of data, there is no directionality, and that lack of directionality, in my sense, is the best evidence that there is no specific lab origin. Obviously, there's more data to be and work to be done, but I think in the totality, the confusing array of data and inconsistency and unexplained nature data is the best evidence, right, that probably natural origin is the most likely.
Although we know a lot on reverse genetic systems and we have the ability to modify virus by using genetic engineering, we do not know at all the things that we know to engineer a virus like this. So SARS coronavirus 2. So although I have been collaborating with Cheng-Li Shi from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, I don't think neither Cheng-Li, neither us, we could engineer a virus such as SARS coronavirus 2. That's probably I can say that as well as another set of people, because we don't have the knowledge for that.
I think part of the reason is that a few politicians are trying to steal the entire narratives, and so the scientists are pretty much on the sideline of the whole scenario in finding the virus origins. So this is something actually, if we are serious trying to find where the virus came from, how it evolved, and getting into human and disseminated, we need to do in a scientific manner.
In the meantime, a recent study of the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccines has dropped from 91% to 66% since the Delta variant has become the dominant strain in the US. In the meantime, the New South Wales state in Australia recorded over 1,200 COVID-19 cases today, which is also fueled by the Delta variant.
New South Wales reported a record 1,218 coronavirus infections today, with the vast majority in Sydney, which is the epicenter of the Delta-fueled outbreak, with an additional 6 deaths. More than half of Australians have been in weeks-long lockdowns as officials in Sydney and Melbourne, and the capital Canberra struggled to quell the outbreak. In this backdrop, the New South Wales Premier too suspects the cases in the intensive care units will rise, urging the citizens to get vaccinated. Meanwhile, in the US, the number of COVID-19 cases now stand above the 39.6 million mark due to the spread of the Delta variant across its states. Meanwhile, in the US, the rapid spread of the Delta variant across its states resulted in the total number of COVID-19 cases to cross the 39 million mark. The deaths are now at 654,381. The country had also administered a total of 365,740,640 vaccine doses as of Friday. According to a new study conducted by the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccines has dropped from 91% to 66% since the Delta variant became dominant in the US. Looking into over 4,000 respondents who were infected with COVID-19, CDC researchers found the protection rate of the 3 widely used doses in the US, respectively Pfizer, Moderna, and the Johnson & Johnson, stood at around 91% between December 2020 and April 2021. However, according to the new study, the overall efficacy of vaccines had slipped since April, showing a weakened protection against the highly contagious Delta strain. In the meantime, thousands marched in Berlin yesterday to protest against restrictions aimed at limiting the spread of the coronavirus pandemic, even after demonstrations were banned. Police said protesters had gathered for unauthorized marches in different parts of the city centre and said they had pulled out about 50 people of the crowd, in some cases charging them with assaulting officers. The country at the moment faces a 4th wave of infections, where it reported a rise in 10,303 coronavirus cases yesterday. To nudge more people to get vaccinated, the government has said it will stop offering free tests from the 11th of October, except for those of whom vaccination is not recommended, such as children and pregnant women. The government will require people to be either vaccinated, test negative, or have a recovery certificate to enter indoor restaurants, participate in religious ceremonies, and do indoor sports.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.